Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and tonight we're going to do a color along in Millie Marotta's Island Escape. And I'm going to do this page. I'm going to be using prismacolors, so let's get started. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you're coming back, it's good to see you again. My name's Wendy, and tonight we're going to be using Prismacolors and Distress Oxides to create this beautiful bird. So the way I've formatted this is I start off each segment at real time, and then after a few moments or examples, then I go ahead and speed things up so that I don't bore the tears out of you, and hopefully it'll give you a good idea of what I'm going to do, because a lot of this is a little bit repetitive. So for the most part, there's only going to be one color on the screen at a time, but I wanted to show you the first four colors that we're going to be using, which is indigo blue, slate gray, jade green, and gray green light. For some reason the word light got cut off on this one, but yeah, I'm basically going to go through each one and do them exactly the same way. I hope you all had a good Memorial Day. I know it's graduation time. We went to Wyoming and saw my cousin graduate, and it was really nice getting to see the family. We all had a good time. They have a little get-together afterwards at the local bowling alley, and we got to play some cornhole and bowl, and it's a little humbling to remember how bad you suck at bowling. Actually, I just really struggled because I felt like all the balls were made for like 3-year-old fingers that were like for a 6'5" man. Like they were super spread apart, but then the holes were like the size of my pinky. And as you can tell, I don't exactly have like dainty little girl hands, but at the same time, it's not like I'm a 6'2" monster or something. So that was kind of interesting. So the bowling ball I was using was a little on the heavy side, and like my thumb would kind of get stuck. So it was an adventure, but we all had a really good time, and as always, it's good to see family. The grandson was there, so I got to spend 3 days with him uninterrupted, so that was really nice too. And I'll try and pop up a picture at the end of the video like I always do. That way, for those of you that just want to color, you can not be interrupting your coloring journey with grandbaby pictures. But I do have a cute little video of him giggling that I'll share at the end. So take a peek at that if you're interested. I really like this combination that I'm using. I feel like these muted, cool greens of the jade and the gray-green light with that deep richness of the blue is just really, I don't know, I like it. So I'll definitely be using that again. So what else is happening in your world? Around here, the weather has been rainier for longer than I can ever remember. I'm sure we've had other seasons that were like this, but there just seems to be an unusual amount of rain. I don't know if that's happening nationwide or if it's just a Colorado thing. It's been kind of nice because it's kept our temperatures reasonable. All this week we're supposed to be in the 70s with occasional thunder showers, so that's kind of nice. Usually by now we're in the 80s, and I'm wanting to turn on the swamp cooler and cool things down, but I really haven't had to do that. I've been able to just open windows and get the perfect temperature, which I really like because then you get a lot of fresh air, which is nice. You know, I really like the look of this before I put on the second layer. I was tempted to leave it that way just because the colors were so pretty. You know, just that soft, I don't know, muted, kind of tranquil colors. And so you definitely could do that. But I do tend to be a little bit more of a vibrant girl, and so I couldn't resist going in and putting in the next layer and just kind of blending everything out. And the second layer really does add the smoothness, and it gets rid of a lot of the tooth of the paper. Now if you wanted it even smoother, because two layers doesn't get 100% of it, you could use a blending medium on this, a Gamsol, Zest It, baby oil, Vaseline, whatever your blending solvent of choice is. But I don't mind a little bit. I don't want it to look grainy when I look at it, like as a first glance, but I'm not overly concerned if I see a little touch of white here and there. I feel like it adds just a hint of texture, and I'm fine with that. So in this section, I am only going in with the jade green and the gray green light, just because I wanted a little variance of color. I think it would look perfectly fine to do the 4-color blend on this if you wanted to as well. I think it's whatever personal preference that you have. But I chose not to add the blue in this, just to add a little bit of a variety. Here I went in with the indigo blue, and quite honestly, I think jade green would be a good choice here as well. I think it would look just as good with the jade green, but I do like the blue too. I really like how this page turns out in general. But just to kind of throw out some options for you. Here I'm going to be using the full range of the French grays, which are my favorite of the grays. I really like French grays. To me, they almost feel like just a grayed down, I guess they are just a grayed down version of brown, but I like the combination of the brown with the blues. Now, if you were using other pencils, I would probably, I mean, you could try like a sepia type of brown. Some of your more cool browns I think would work here. But you could also repeat the same blue tones. Maybe varying, like I did here, the dark at the top fading to light, whereas the ridge above is light fading to dark. So you could make these a variation that way, or you could make them just simply a repeat of the layer above. I think that would look good too. I just wanted to add, I didn't want an all blue bird. Nothing wrong with an all blue bird, just in my mind I like the idea of adding the brown tones to this bird, or the gray tones, however you want to look at it. Just for the variety. That's kind of the neat thing about these Millie Marotta books, is all the variations in the patterns that she uses really gives you a lot of creative license to go in, and you could color each one of those individual lines in a pattern, you know, using 2 or 3 different tones and doing it that way. So yeah, sorry about that. I forgot to switch out the card. So I'm just making my way from 90% to 20%, just going and adding a little bit to each one. So just know that that's kind of what I did here. But it took me a little bit to figure out how I wanted to do this one, just simply because they do have that pattern, and so I was like, am I supposed to, you know, how much am I supposed to utilize this pattern? I feel like I'm always struggling to figure out what to talk about on these videos. For those of you that know me in real life, you would find that comical, because I'm pretty talkative by nature. But I have a question for you guys, and I would love if you would leave me an answer in the comment. I see a lot of, you know, work in progress Wednesday, and people always talking about unfinished pages. I literally do not have a single whip. Not one. If I set out to do a page, I've always completed the page. And I'm feeling really odd man out on this. Am I the only one that is like that? Maybe it's because I take a fair amount of time to figure out what page I want to do, and I look at what pencils I think would be best in terms of a color palette when I decide what pencils to use with this one, you know, or for each page. Like in this one, I just, for some reason, this color combination kind of spoke to me, and so I felt like Prismas were the best choice for it. So I kind of plan everything out, and then I sit down and do it. And I know a lot of people, when they color, they just grab up their pencils, they grab a book, they flip through and they go, yep, that's the one I want to color, and then they just start coloring. And I don't know, I really wish I could be a little bit more like that. I think I am kind of a planner by nature, and so I'm an overthinker by nature. I could overthink anything. You know, and so I think about all these things. Like, I knew before I started coloring this picture what the background was going to be, what colors I was going to use. Now, sometimes I'll start a picture with just a vague idea in mind, you know, like a generality, like, oh, I just want a blue bird, or, you know, in a gray background or whatever. So I don't like literally plot it out to the pencil, because even in this one I ended up pulling in the oranges for the beaks and the legs, and down in the flowers I decided I didn't want the gray browns, I wanted a warmer tone. So I'm always open and flexible, I feel, but I don't know. I literally don't have a single work in progress. So I'm just wondering, let me know in the comments if you have a lot of whips, if you don't have any whips, if you've got one or two, or, you know, I do know that sometimes if you're not doing this full time, if you got a full-time job and or kids, or you know, life stuff, you can't always color as much as you'd like. And so I understand like the one page work in process. I'm talking about dozens of works in process. Like, people just color the bird's feathers in this and then move on. And I just want to know how many people that's a reality for. And I hope this isn't coming across as judgy, like, oh, if you're that, then that's wrong. Because I can be super fickle, and I have started many a card and not finished it. I just don't find it to be the case as much when I color. And I'm feeling like the only one, because I literally see days of the week dedicated to whips, you know, so it obviously is a thing. So let me know your thoughts on that. So me again, popping back in. I just am really struggling today to figure out what to talk about. Sometimes I wish these were live so I'd have a little bit more feedback from you guys. But I am going to be going on vacation coming up, and I'm going to be heading back east. And as of right now, we don't have an exact destination. We have a converted Sprinter van that's like an RV that we built, and so we just kind of jump in the van and see where we end up. And this year we took a little extra time, and so we're going to be going back east. So also let me know in the comments where you think what I should check out. I'm really open. We don't have any agenda right now. I live in Colorado, so like I said, we're going to be headed east, but we could head east and do the Michigan, Wisconsin, northern part, or we could, do more of a southern route. A couple of years ago, we went down and we went down to, what is it? North Carolina, I think it is, where, what are those mountains? The really pretty ones down there. So we went down through Tennessee, and we saw Pigeon Forge and all of that area, and then just went down farther. I know you guys are all screaming at me. I can hear you screaming at your TVs. Smoky Mountains, that's what it is. The Smoky Mountains. We went down there, and that is really pretty country down in there. And there's definitely a lot more in that area that I would like to see. And, it's just also different from, I've lived a lot of places in my life. Been in Colorado for over 20 years now, so this is definitely where I call home. But I've probably lived in just about every state west of the Mississippi, and so I've traveled a fair amount. But the East Coast is a little more unknown to me. So I would welcome your recommendations for the hot spots. Where can we go? Where should we go? What should we do? So we tend to be a little more nature oriented as opposed to fine dining, the opera, things like that. Not to say I wouldn't be open to some of those things. It's just a little more out of our comfort zone. And we have our small dog that'll be going with us. Miss Ellie will be going. And so she's a consideration too. We do have some climate control in the van, so we have options. But obviously I'm not going to leave her in the van, climate controlled or not, for 8 hours. So that is a little bit of a consideration. But for me, having her here as companionship for me is worth the trade-off. My husband's a UPS driver, so he works long hours. He's gone a lot. I work from home doing this stuff, and I also have a couple other businesses that I work out of home, so it keeps me a little bit isolated. And just like right now, she's curled up asleep within petting distance of me right now in her little bed, and just knowing that she's there is a big comfort to me. So I guess it's worth the trade-off that I can't maybe do the vacation, the ultimate vacation, that I would maybe want to do if I didn't have her. I'm sure those of you that have pets understand what I'm speaking to. The big joke in our family is that my dogs are always my favorite child. And I always told my boys, well, of course they're my favorite child because they don't talk. I can make them say whatever I want. So my husband and I often speak to each other through the dog. We'll say stuff like, well, Ellie says this, or Ellie wants that, when really it's us saying that. But, just joking around, because, you can be like, oh, well, Ellie thinks I look fabulous in this shirt. And she can't deny it. And so her looks are up for interpretation. Whereas your kids, there's usually very little interpretation. They're very willing to tell you exactly what they think of your shirt or whatever else, what you're eating, where you're going, what you're doing, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the big family joke. But we invest a lot of time in our dogs and make sure that they get trained properly, and that way they're not ruining our things, they're not misbehaving, the neighbors don't hate them, those kind of things. And it makes for, some might say, a spoiled little dog. But I feel like as long as your dog is, I think they should be spoiled. I think that's, if you're going to have a dog, you should treat them like their family, because they are. And that's how I've always treated my dogs. I mean, that being said, I think there's a difference between a spoiled dog and a dog that hasn't been trained and is just doing whatever they want. Now, does that mean that I don't give in to Ellie? Maybe if she asks me for one more treat than she should have, I mean, possibly, but there's plenty of times when I tell her no more. Like, you can't have another one. She's super smart. She has these treats that they're like salmon. They're salmon little sticks, so we call them her fish sticks. And she knows that when we sit down for dinner, she gets one at dinner time. And so if we sit down at another time, she'll try it. What she does is she'll go nose the bag. Like, can I have one? And usually we say, no, you wait for dinner. And then she goes on and does her own thing. But if we're eating a snack, she will continue to nose the bag until she gets her snack. So she's super smart. But to me, that's different than someone that just lets their dog get away with whatever. Whether it's, just misbehaving. So I had a big mental debate with myself on this particular feather. For some reason, Millie decided to make this feather have a different texture, or, you know, it's got a whole different lines and everything else. So I felt like it should be done in the other color, in the grays. What are your thoughts? Because I really, same with the feather above that I did in the grays. Do you think these should have all been done in blue? Because I really did debate for quite a while. Like, was there a reason? Is this particular tail feather something special? I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter. This one is 50% gray. Sorry, the little thing's kind of out of the... I wanted to zoom in for you guys, and sometimes it makes it hard to keep all the little cards in place. This one's 30% gray, and then of course I end with 20% gray. And then I'm going to go back in with the darkest and just repeat the steps just like I did before. So this is the... And this really is 30% gray. I felt like the others didn't really need the additional layer. By going over it with the 30 and the 20, I felt like that was fine. Next up is his little beak. So I debated quite a while as to whether or not I wanted to bring in the brown from the brown that I'm going to use in the leaves, or what I wanted to do here. And I ultimately decided that I wanted to bring in some orange. Not a lot of orange, but just little pops of orange. So there's a little bit in the background, and then a little bit here on his beak and eye, and then down on his leg, just to add a little something extra. I really like this goldenrod color. Not necessarily like, oh, it's my favorite actual color, but I just find it very useful as a bridge with reds, browns, oranges, yellows. I just find it to be a really versatile, useful color. This piece could have been done in orange too. I just opted to bring in the brown a little bit. This was another spot that I was kind of like, do I put the dark color up by the beak and go light towards the back of the head? Or do I start with the light at the beak and work darker back to the head? Ultimately, I obviously decided to do dark by the beak, but it definitely was a thought process for me. Do you think I chose right? So it kind of confused me, this little grouping right here. Initially, I didn't think they were a part of the feathers, and so I thought they were a part of the belly. And then so I color them with the orange, and I go ahead and color the other feathers. I noticed that I missed a spot right there, but I noticed, so anyway, I just thought these were a part of this feather. Here I missed another feather too, so I go ahead and touch those up. So now that I'm looking at these feathers, I decide that those 2 orange feathers, or belly, or whatever those are, I go to fill in the last one that I missed there, and I decide I think they should be blue. So I use my putty eraser. I get as much of the pigment as I can, then I go in with the mono eraser, and then I go back in and cover them all blue. I'm not really clear on these. I'm not sure why they have the little line there. And I still miss one. So all that concentration and I still managed to miss one. And look, I'm even touching up and I still miss it. Maybe I think that's part of the nest. I don't know. To me, looking at it now, it looks like a feather. So I guess all of this line art is open for interpretation, right? So I'm not sure why I started with the cream here, which is what I just initially laid in. I don't do that, I don't think, going forward. So I'm going to do this one in real time, and then I'll speed up the rest of them. But I'm just laying in my darker brown here in the center, and then I'm going to work my way out, bringing in raw umber and mineral orange, or light umber, not raw umber, light umber. So I wanted to bring in some of that orange. So I go in with the mineral orange. And I'm going to blend that to the browns, just to add a little warmth to this picture. A lot of the the colors I've used so far have been cool tones, and I really wanted to bring in some warm tones just to add a nice contrast. Now, as you can tell from the picture, all of those little end bobbles you could do at the same time. So if you want to kind of watch ahead, see how I do things with those, and then go back and do them all at once, that's probably the more efficient way of doing it. But you know me, I've got to add that one extra step for no apparent reason. Honestly, at this point, I just didn't know what I was going to do with those pieces, and I wanted to see what it looked like all of it done, to see if I needed more orange in there, or if I needed more dark in there, or would they look better light. And so I didn't do it. But like I said, if you watch this forward, you'll see I'm going to use the same colors that I'm using right now. So if you want to be, efficient about it. But what's the fun in that? I mean, come on. So I wanted to bring in just those green colors, but I felt like it was missing a little bit of contrast. And I really didn't want to reintroduce the blue in the leaves, so I brought in this cool gray. And I felt like that really worked, especially with this jade green. So I kind of wish in retrospect I might have went with a gray-green light here. I think it worked out fine, but I think maybe having the lighter spots might have worked too. Okay, so I messed up, guys, and I deleted part of the creation of the background, and I'm really sorry, but I did list out here what I was doing, and I'll try and walk you through it as well. But I wanted to go in, you see I laid out all my colors for the nest, and then I decided that I wanted to do the background first. Now, Antique Oxide was a very juicy pad, and so I find it helpful to tap it off on the side just so you don't end up with that big blob of color when you put it on. So if you have a new pad, keep that in mind. You definitely want to test these off to the side. And but I wanted to add that color behind the nest so that it wasn't just the nest and then nothing behind it. And I really didn't want to be fiddling with a light color. You could use a colored pencil, I guess, and just go with a light color in the background. But I found that I really liked using the Distress Oxide on this paper. It worked really well. So at this point I decide, let's just go ahead and do the background. So I used the small finger dauber to get close to this bird. I found it gave me a little more control than the bigger dauber that I'm going to use here in a minute. But I just want to go around the bird and get as close to the side as I can. And I apologize, I thought I had the entire picture in the back in the frame, but it looks like I'm missing a little bit of it. I can't tell you, I feel like my brain is in a different hemisphere when I'm actually creating and coloring versus the whole filming. Wendy uses a different part of her brain, so I apologize. I do try and be mindful, but you do tend to get kind of in your head and forget about everything but what you're doing. If you notice, I do tend to tap off with this color because it is a really juicy pad, which is a good thing, but you want to be mindful. So here I go in with the bigger dauber. And what I also found is that I didn't have to be that careful around my bird because the wax in your colored pencil kind of acts as a little bit of a resist. Now I wouldn't want to just willy-nilly go over the bird, but like, you know, if I brushed up against one of those leaves or his beak right here, I didn't feel like it was popping out like crazy. Now, if I had been using dark brown or black or something like that, of course you would probably be able to see it. But I just wanted to mention that. Because if you do your background first, and I am going to be doing a video in the future talking about why you might want to do your background first, because I want to talk about how color changes other colors. So you can see just as you're putting this down how it really does change visually how the bird looks on the page. And so I'm going to be talking specifically about that, and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks that I use to test these things so that I know, like I told you at the beginning, I was aware of what color I was going to put on the background because I had tested it out. And I'll tell you how I do that. And there's going to be it'll be a wind down Wednesday in the next few weeks. But anyway, I'm basically going over the entire page with this yellow oxide. And then I'm going to be going in with vintage photo and bringing it in from the edges. Now do be careful and hold your page down, because in your motion it's kind of easy to pull your page, and you don't want to put a crimp in your page. I do get a little bit of a crease in this page in that top left hand corner where it's loose. It's not a unforgiving, you can see it in that top left hand corner there, but I apologize. I don't know how I managed to not get this footage, but basically I've went in with the vintage photo and I'm adding just a little bit more. I'm trying to get as close to that edge as I can, and then I go in and blend it, and I have blended in some rusty hinge to bring in a little bit of that orange, and then I kind of use the antique linen to kind of go over the top of all of it and blend it all out, because as you can see right now it doesn't look as blended as the final result that you see. So you see a touch of this here. And then somehow in this footage I also missed down at the bottom here, and I am going to move this up. I've already put on the weathered wood, and I somehow don't have that footage. But I do use a paper towel to keep my fingers from getting all inky and leaving fingerprints all over the place. But I'm going in with this hickory smoke just to add a little variance of color and to kind of deepen the edges a little bit. Now you could use any colors you want. I just thought the gray would look nice to kind of ground this, as opposed to if I did it all in yellow, I kind of felt like it would make the bird look like he was like somehow floating, because yellow is not exactly a sky color, but at the same time I didn't want to do it all in yellow. But so I went in with that hickory smoke, and then I come back in with the weathered wood, and then I'm just going to kind of try and blend it up into the yellow, and then I'll go back in, or the antique linen, and then I'll go back in with the antique linen and blend it out a little bit more as well. But you could make this look as marbled as you want. That's the nice thing about these kind of backgrounds, is you can make it all be this smooth blend gradient, or you can leave more distinct pops of color and have it look a little more mottled, and it still looks fine. So it's whatever you like. So once again, just kind of blending it out there on the edges. So the final step is using these 6 colors. I am just going into each of those little twiggies and adding random pops of color onto them. Some of them will be the entire twig, and some of them will be kind of a half and half of colors, but no real rhyme or reason, just trying to vary the color a little bit but still keep in that same family of colors. So for the final step, I decided I wanted to activate the oxide. And the way you do that is you spritz it with water, and you can see where the water hits, it starts to lighten. And then you just put a paper towel over it and blot it up. The longer you let it sit there, the more it will react. It does not always look white like this. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So if you vary your spritz, you will get different reactions. So I just do this a couple of times until I get enough variation in the background to be interesting to me. You could do this as much as you want, but I just felt like this added a little bit of interest to the page. So that's it. I appreciate you guys stopping in. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the content. Also, I would love to hear about your whips and places to go on vacation. So drop me a comment, and until the next time, I hope you have a great day.
Go to sleep. Sleep at the bowling alley. Sleep. Sleep. Go to sleep.
How's that? Throw an arm. Bam! Catch it. Bam! Okay, throw it. Bam! Okay, ready? Throw it. Okay, switch. Okay, let's see. Okay, throw it. Okay, catch it. Boom! Okay, grab it. Throw it. Boom!